So you want to play some Cele Renegade, but you just don't know where to start. Maybe you've heard it's super expensive. You could just want to gear it and try it out for less than the cost of a single superior rune of tormenting. Maybe you just want a build that slaps harder than Will Smith on Oscar night. Okay, we're going to have to hit way harder than that. This is Renegade, but cheap. Hey, what's good everyone? You got Mind Circus here with you, and welcome to Cele Renegade, but cheap. Before we get started, if you are new to Guild Wars 2, new to the channel, just haven't done so yet, I am currently farming likes and subscribes in an effort to build the channel, and if you want to hook me up with one of those just below the video, that would be amazing. And with that out of the way, let's get started with our shopping list. So our shopping list off the TP looks a little like this. We will be using 1 Brutus's Helm, 1 Brutus's Pauldrons, 1 Brutus's Chest Guard, 1 Sheena's Greaves, 1 Sheena's Gauntlets, 1 Sheena's Leg Plates. This is what is known as carrying gear. We'll be using 2 Superior Sigils of Demons. We will grab 6 Crests of the Rabid, 1 Bow of the Pale Stag, which is an exotic short bow. We will grab 1 Moonshine, which is an exotic mace. We will grab 1 Labrys, which is an exotic axe. We will grab 2 Carrion Rings, 2 Fangs of Tequatl, 1 Rare Rabid Spine Guard, and a Carrion Amulet. So with all that purchased, let's first do the tail of the tape, so to speak, and realize that we are spending 9 gold, 42 silver, and 11 copper at the time of filming. So let's go ahead and just pull up some bits here and see how this all comes together. As you will see, I am using the Superior Rune of the Afflicted, which came with the exotic armor. This is pretty good on the cheap. There are other alternatives. I am putting in the Crests of the Rabid into our trinkets. And in the bow, we will be using the Superior Sigil of Force that comes with the bow and the Superior Sigil of Demons that we purchased. In the weapons, our secondary weapons here, what we will have is our Superior Sigil of Demons, and I have left the Superior Sigil of Air in here. There are better options. Let's go ahead and talk about those options now at this point. When I run this in full Vipers. Now, this is not an Alacrity Renegade. This is your open world kind of survival thing. It can provide some alacrity. We'll talk about that in the gameplay section, but we are running full damage gear. Now, when it comes to runes in this, I might use the Torment runes, but usually on this setup, I'm going to go ahead and use Superior Runes of the Nightmare. I don't have those in there. You're going to get those from running the Twilight Arbor explorables. You'll use the currency gained there to buy those. The other option, obviously, being the Torment runes, which can be crafted or purchased off the TP for a not inconsiderable cost. Let's take a look at the weapons when we're talking about our gear progression. I'm running Torment and Bursting runes in both of these, and that really is just the way to go. Now, this is going to be your damage setup, which we are replicating here. One other option that you can go with fairly confidently is to, instead of running Viper's gear, to run this in complete Trailblazers. If you're one of those players that runs into survivability options, I would suggest going for the Trailblazers, but this build does really sustain itself quite nicely, so I think you're really better off just going into the Viper's gear. That said, you know, it's all up to you. There are options. One is not necessarily 100% better than the other. But going back to what we are running here, we are running again carrying gear with a few pieces of Rabid. This will keep our precision really high as well as our condition damage. So let's go ahead at this point and take a look at how I have the build set up. I'm going to be running Devastation, I'm going to be running Corruption, I am going to be running Renegade. Under Devastation, we're going to be running Battle Scarred, we're going to be running Thrill of Combat, we are going to be running Dance of Death. Now, let's talk about this for a couple of seconds. There are a couple of really good options here. What we can do here is run Unsuspecting Strikes if we don't need the sustain. This is the same over here. We can run Swift Termination if we don't need the sustain from Dance of Death. These are all 3 sustained traits. This one I would call non-negotiable. These 2, however, you could comfortably move up to the second row. And the reason being is we're doing a meaningful amount of power damage in addition to all the Condi damage that we're doing. So it's a kind of the question where if you're feeling confident and you want to experiment, just go ahead and click those in there, figure out which one you like best. Some people need the sustain, some people prefer the damage. Let's look under here, under Corruption. We're going to be running Acolyte of Torment, which will give us a damage increase of a Torment damage. This is huge and absolutely non-negotiable, as is Abyssal Chill. When you chill a foe, also inflict Torment on them. And finally, Diabolic Inferno. Invoke Torment applies poison and burning. We'll go over it in the gameplay section, but that is when we switch over to our Demon stance, we will be proccing Diabolic Inferno. Under Renegade, we'll be running Ashen Demeanor. Disabling a foe cripples your enemy, which leaves them vulnerable and inspires you with Callous Fervor. We do a fair bit of disabling on this build, and this does come into play. You wouldn't be wrong, however, for running Blood Fury. Fury increases the duration of bleeds you inflict. Gaining Fury inspires you with Callous Fervor. You probably want to make some changes to the build if you were going to be running this. We're going to be running Heart Piercer. Your short bow skills now pierce, bleeding you inflict, deals more damage. This is a straight up DPS increase that is absolutely better than the other 2 options on this build. And finally, we'll be running Lasting Legacy. Lasting Legacy, Callous Fervor you inspire, lasts longer and is more potent. Heroic Command grants more mites per stack of Callous Fervor. We'll go over this again in the gameplay section. You do have a couple of options here. I think we'll talk to them at that point. And that, my friends, is the build. Let's go ahead and get ourselves into a little bit of combat training and find out how this all comes together. So gameplay on this is actually more simple than you might think, but what we are going to just talk about really quickly before we go on is about Alacrity and Alacrity revs and why this does not kind of fit the bill. If you look at the build, I'm just going to pull this up really quickly. We have a little bit of a trait here that is called Righteous Rebel. Righteous Rebel goes ahead and gives us the ability to maintain more alacrity is really the best way to put it. Orders from above lasts longer and affects a larger target area. What Orders from above is here, which is providing the alacrity. Without really gearing into it, even if we trait into it this way, we are giving about 50% alacrity uptime. Now, if you're in a situation where alacrity at 50% for the group that you are in is the difference between success and fail, obviously you can go ahead and put this in here, just fire F4 off cooldown and provide that alacrity. But that said, this build is not set up to do so. If you are at all interested in providing alacrity, being an alacrity rev, or even a hybrid damage alacrity rev, I will point you to my Celestial Renegade build, which I will link in the description down below. Very different in the way it's all set up and geared. Also a lot more expensive, so keep that in mind, but it is another option if you are looking for something else down the road. So let's go over the gameplay on this one. It is deceptively simple. We are going to stick with the basics, worry about only the things that we're going to be using on a regular basis. The first thing to understand is our class mechanic here. Our class mechanic is the F2, 3, and 4 skills. The F2 is the only one we're going to use. Let's talk about that for a moment. The only time we're going to be using the F4 is when we are traded for alacrity. Otherwise, it is not really going to be of real value to us. And you know, this skill here, Citadel Bombardment, is just not worth the energy cost. If you are used to playing Rev at all, you know that it is just really imperative to be using only skills that utilize energy efficiently. So we are going to use the F2 skill and the F1 to swap legends on a regular basis. Those are going to be our big wins up here. Let's look at the short bow. Under understanding as we have traded it that the short bow actually pierces, so it will go through multiple enemies. Let's take a look at the skills. Number 1 is just our general auto attack. It also delivers some bleeding, as you see. Those stacks build up pretty quick. It's not bad. It is a serviceable auto attack. Number 2 is also going to give us some bleeding. Does the piercing as well. Not bad. Absolutely usable off cooldown. Our big win here, though, is 7-shot. Number 3. It is big damage and a whole bunch of torment, so we'll fire this off cooldown as often as possible. Our last 2 skills here are situational at best. Number 4 is going to be used if we need to apply some AoE. So we can just put that down. Pretty simple little targeted AoE right there. And number 5 is going to be mainly used for its CC capabilities, and we'll take a look at that in a few moments. Let's go over to the mace really quickly. On the mace, mace axe actually, we have a few things to keep in mind on here. First off, the auto attack is not bad at all. Number 2 lays down a fire field, so that is pretty handy to us. And if we are using 2 and then 3, we get a little combo with some might there. That is not an insignificant amount of might, so we do want to keep that in mind. Let's go ahead over to the 4. Now this is some chill, as you saw during our build. This will provide us some value. It's also soft CC. It is also a pretty decent gap closer. If we take a look at that, just teleports us in. So that is really handy at that point. And number 5 is CC. We will look at that when we get to all of the CCs. Let's look at the legends really quickly. I am going to really recommend that you only use 3 of these legends, and maybe the last one in a situational level. Really, again, we're talking about energy management. Number 1 is our heal. It's an area heal. It's a serviceable heal. It's not bad. Darkrazor's Daring here is going to provide us our stun break. It's also going to give us some CC, and it is going to give us a second of stability. Not maybe the most amount of stability in the world, but it will do in a pinch, so we can just lay that down when we're stunned. And it is pretty effective that way. Ice Racer's Ire is going to come into play because it is dealing us vulnerability, or dealing vulnerability on the enemy. Now, if you look at the way our build is set up here, applying vulnerability to foes grants stacks of battle scars. Battle scars equals healing. So we'll keep that in mind, that if we do need kind of a quick off heal, that will do the job. And you'll see that vulnerability stacks really quickly off that power. It is pretty impressive. I will recommend you stay away from Razor Claw's Edge. It is not the biggest damage. It is really not worth the energy management cost. And we have Soul Cleave Summit. Now, Soul Cleave Summit is situational. If you are in a group and you are in one of those oh shit moments, this is a really good power to fire off at that point. Otherwise, the cost to sustain this in terms of your energy is absolutely massive. We can watch our energy just start to go down super quick, and if we start doing anything else at that point, it's totally going to kill our energy. So good in situations, but again, this is the kind of thing that you'd want to be kind of traded for and built for to really get value out of it. So I will recommend that you just kind of stick with the first 3 on this one. Let's go over into Demon Stance here. Demon Stance, again, we've got a couple of really good powers and some situational stuff. Empowering Misery is a serviceable heal. If you are under conditions, it will increase that heal. That's about it for it. But Call to Anguish is a really decent little power. So let's take a look at this. Call to Anguish is a jump. When we land, everything in that area will get sucked into it. So it's also going to do a little bit of break bar hate. We'll look at that again in the break bar section. Our stun break here is going to be pain absorption. Pain absorption is worth the use as a stun break. That's about it. Resistance maybe not of greatest value in open world. Again, with banish enchantments, this does a little damage and some chill. Its main though purpose is removing boons, so it is something that we can use pretty situationally when we are running into foes with boons. But again, I'm going to recommend you kind of use these two on a less less occasionally than maybe other powers. And then finally, Embrace the Darkness. Now, Embrace the Darkness is a really good kind of damaging power. If we put this up, it starts to pull some condies. If we are in short bow range and we start doing this, this is really going to start stacking damage really quickly. So when it comes to doing damage on this build, your absolute best way to go is to make sure that you are in short bow. All right, attacking, and then we will put on Embrace the Darkness. Once we've got our stacks of Callous Fervor, we'll go ahead and consume those with F2. We'll hit this, and that really is a lot of damage we're pumping down with very little effort. So keep in mind that the edge of your circle here is really going to dictate the optimum level of the enemy away from you when you're kind of fighting things. But again, it's kind of one of those kits where firing everything off cooldown is going to punish you, so stick with the first 3 here, and you're a little less punished on the Axe Mace combo when it comes to, firing things off cooldown there. But keep in mind to hit the 2 and then the 3, and that will generate you a little extra might. Let's go ahead and talk about CC for a few moments, because we've got a lot of it, and a lot of it is of pretty high value. Again, we get our soft CC off the 4 on Axe and huge CC off the 5 on the Axe, so that is a really nice little CC combo that we can fire off whenever we want. We will go over to short bow, and our big win on the short bow is just with the short bow 5. Okay, keeping in mind that that's a knockdown if we are talking about multiple enemies without break bars, so that's really helpful there as well. So there you have it, my friends. That is Condi Shortbow Renegade, built for less than 10 gold. It obviously is not going to reach the heights that it would reach under a more expensive setup. Big recommend is to get into that Viper's gear as soon as possible, or that Trailblazer's gear, whichever is the case may be. Looking at the rune choices. And if you're interested in more of a hybrid support option that permas Alacrity, again, there's going to be a link in the description down below to my Celestial Renegade build, which is absolutely fantastic for that purpose. But if you're looking to get your feet wet, I can't think of a better way to go ahead and do it than this. So that's really it. I'm going to thank you all very much for watching. I am going to remind you to have fun in game and min-max your real life. And I'm glad we took this moment. We'll see you next time.